Hi, I'm John Mayfield, the real estate tech guy, with another Global Real Estate School podcast. Welcome to the podcast. This is episode 158. My name is John Mayfield, the real estate tech guy, and thanks so much for joining. Well, we're going to talk about contracts today, and actually have a question I'm going to read you and then see if you can answer the question, and then we will come back and discuss this topic a little further. So again, we're going to be discussing a question, and I'm going to read this question for you. I will put this in the show notes as well. But if you were to see a question on the real estate examination, and the contract said something about an offer to purchase or a contract, which is not in writing, what would be another name for that? Would it be a formal contract? Perhaps a unilateral contract? How about a bilateral contract? Or could it be a parol contract? Now, possibly bilateral could throw you off a little bit because we're thinking of, bilateral. One party makes a promise, another party there's two promises going on there. Unilateral, remember, only one promise. Good example of a unilateral contract is a reward. But what would be another name for a contract that's not in writing? Well, the correct answer is B, parol contract. And parol actually also means verbal or oral. But in real estate, for the examination, sometimes we need to know that there's this definition called the parol evidence rule. And what this means is that courts will only look at what's in writing for the contract. Now remember, under the statute of frauds, all contracts must be what? In writing. That's correct. Leases that are for over a year, for real estate sales contracts, those all need to be in writing. And that falls under what is called the statute of frauds. So the word parol, if you saw a question that said, another name for a contract that wasn't in writing, it would be a parol contract. Why? Because a parol contract, parol stands for verbal. So if it's not in writing, it's a verbal contract. So that's the correct answer. But I want you to also understand that if you see something with regards to the parol evidence rule, it means that the courts will only look at the written terms of that contract. So if you saw a question and two people agreed on some terms, put everything in the contract, and then the question went on to say later in a final walkthrough, the seller said they were going to leave the kids' playground set in the backyard that was portable and had not been put in concrete or anything, and you were like, great, our kids would love to have that swing set. And then after closing, you go to move in, the swing set's gone. You can't go to court and try to get that back. Why? It wasn't a part of the original contract. And any kind of verbal agreements that are made outside the contract, they fall under that definition of the parol evidence rule, which means the court simply will not take into consideration any kind of verbal agreements. So parol contract is an oral contract, and the parol evidence rule, well, you know that as well. Courts are only going to look at what's in writing on the contract. And do not forget, contracts need to be in writing. Real estate contracts need to be in writing. Let me be more specific on that. And by the way, when I say real estate contracts, leases for over a year, those need to be in writing. Those all fall under what is called the statute of frauds. Well, as always, I appreciate you listening to the podcast. Do not forget to check us out at globalrealestateschool.com. We've got a great tool to help you pass the test called My Real Estate Exam Coach. You can check that out at Global Real Estate School. You can also go to myrealestateexamcoach.com, but it's good in all 50 states. We'd love to have you check that out. Hey, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. As always, go out and make it a great day. Thank you for listening to the podcast for Global Real Estate School. I'm John Mayfield, the Real Estate Tech Guy. Go out and make it a great day.